Well, joining us next is France 24's Shazaib Wala. He was evacuated from Kabul airport. Shazaib, you arrived last night in Paris. You were one of the lucky ones to get on a third plane out of Kabul. What was it like at the airport?
We spent at least one night at the Kabul airport, and I cannot remember a moment in that night when there wasn't aerial firing happening. Outside the Kabul airport, at least 3 to 4 thousand people had gathered, and they were trying to get inside the airport. There were fears. They were afraid of the Taliban, and then the U.S. forces were actually firing shots in the air to keep the crowd outside the airport at distance. The night that we left the airport, I told you there were 4,000 people outside the Kabul airport. But today, this crowd has increased to 10,000 people. What we need to understand is that there's a lot of these people who have gathered outside the airport are ex-government officials, NGO workers, human rights defenders, or intellectuals who are trying to escape the Taliban. Most of them already have foreign visas. Been abandoned by the government. There are no other options for these people. They're trying to get on different countries.
Shazaib, so you're saying that these people are becoming more and more desperate. They don't feel as though the Taliban will give them the amnesty the militants had promised. I mean, it seems like things are getting very desperate down there. What are the conditions like for the people that are waiting to get into the airport? Because we're hearing reports of women, people giving US soldiers their babies so that they can be let through. I mean, what's going on?
Well, we have seen images, we have seen reports from people who are outside the Kabul airport who are sending us videos, and there are horrific scenes outside the airport right now. Just earlier today in the morning, we heard a report of clash between the American forces and the crowd when the American forces actually closed down the northern gate of the Kabul airport, and there were around 5 to 6,000 people outside this northern gate, and they were all trying to get inside, and they were with babies, with young children. There were elderly people around. There hasn't been any system made for these people to actually to wait outside. On one side there are Talibans, on the other side there are Americans. They are actually clogged in between two, and there is constant firing that's happening outside the Kabul airport, like constantly, all day long.
Shazaib, I just wanted to ask you, can you describe to us what the days leading up to your evacuation was like? Because like other countries, France moved their embassy to the airport.
There were a lot of fears in Kabul even before the Taliban entered. But the thing is that all of this happened very fast. It happened very suddenly. A day before, there were reports that it's going to take weeks, at least weeks, for the Taliban to enter inside the Kabul. But the next day, the Taliban had actually entered the city. And as soon as the news of the Taliban entering the city spread, there was huge panic. We saw people actually lining up outside banks, trying to get their money out. There were people who were running towards, like we saw people running on foot towards the airport to get in refuge inside the airport, because they knew that there were foreign forces that were still inside. That were foreign forces that were still there. In the meanwhile, we entered the French embassy in Kabul, and when we were traveling towards the French embassy, we saw on the roads that there were people who were taking down the posters of women on advertisement billboards or outside beauty salons. When we reached the embassy on Sunday afternoon, there were around 50 people already inside the French embassy who had taken refuge there. And we spent 2 nights at the French embassy, and with every passing day, we saw more and more people who were coming.
Okay, Shazaib, well, I'm afraid we're losing the connection, but we'll have to leave it there for now. We're just very glad that you're back and safe.